Thank you
we're
for
good.
tuning in to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast in which conversations about growing tech startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, I'm joined by Keith, founder of Primer. Keith, I like to ask people to introduce themselves, and I think it's a really good way for us to get into this. So please, I want the viewers to understand. Tell me about you. Who is Keith?
Ooh, big question, Rosie. A lot of different ways for me to answer that. I'm a dad. All right, I'll start by that. I got 2 kids, but I'm also running a company, which is really exciting. So I joke that I have 3 under 3, if you count my startup as my 3rd child.
Love that.
Yeah. But no, who am I? Like my journey. I'm American, as you can probably tell by this terrible accent. It's not nearly as fun to hear as yours. I grew up in the Northeast, studied history and political science, ended up a high school history teacher, got into marketing, found my way to Dropbox as an early member of the Dropbox for Business marketing team, and made the pivot from kind of brand strategy, content strategy into growth, because I've always been fairly numbers driven. And this was right around the launch of Dropbox for Business. So it was like it was a very exciting time in that company's journey. It was like kind of peak Silicon Valley moment. Like a lot of the jokes in that show really struck home for me. Kind of was there to, and as we were really focused on monetization, and how to build a really strong growth engine. Kind of the first, it was like PLG before people called it PLG. From there, I left. I went to a YC startup that had just graduated from the program, ran marketing and sales there, built their growth engine from scratch, went and did that for a few other companies, and was kind of like thinking about what I wanted to start on my own, and never, ever wanted to start something in MarTech, because I was like, this is like marketing is just the most fragmented, like overwhelming, like space possible. There's so many tools. Like, is it okay if I swear? I don't know. I swear a lot. Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. I was like, fuck. I mean, it was just like, fuck no, never, even though that's what I knew. Right. It's like it was my expertise. Like a lot of what I had done was around, how do I, like, I'm semi-technical, but I'm not an engineer by trade. But like, how do you stitch together these databases? How do you stitch together these tools? A lot of it's duct tape, Zapier segment, and some Python and some offshore teams. And that was what had led to a lot of my success. And I knew there was an opportunity here because I talked to a bunch of other peers that were, leading growth at other startups who were dealing with the same problem. And they were hiring teams of data engineers as they hit scale. At some point the light bulb went off, and I realized that actually, like, the fragmentation of MarTech might be the opportunity, that we might be hitting a tipping point in SaaS in general. You can see like products are getting more and more niche. And I was reading a story about story about Henry Ford, and the automotive industry in the early 20th century, right? Turn of the 20th century, over 600 auto manufacturers in the US. By the 1950s, there were 5 major ones. And that consolidation, I think, is something that SaaS is probably going to go through at some point, in the not too distant future. If you think we're in the infancy days of SaaS, right? Maybe 10, 15 years of it. The next 20 years will show a lot of consolidation. And I think that there's, if we can be the glue that helps tie together other apps, that is what kind of had the light bulb moment with Primer. And that's what we're focused on. Yeah.
I love that. Well, so you haven't had what a lot of people would say is the typical route into marketing firstly, but then into growing a startup and creating your own thing. But if you could do it all again, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think that there's a bunch of things I'd do differently, but I'd say the number one thing that I would do differently is and then I'm still actually learning how to do differently, is just stay focused. I think that it's very easy to have ideas. It's harder to execute on them. And look, we've obviously executed, right? We've hit a certain stage. We've managed to see a fair amount of success already. But it's still all the time. I have ideas about new features, all these things that we could be doing, that we should be doing. When I realized that, looking back, if I had just stayed, kind of much more rigidly focused on evolving the product one step at a time, we probably would have gotten to where we are faster. And that's, hindsight's 2020, but it's a lesson that I'm trying to take forward as we continue to build out the product. Yeah.
I feel like I say that to myself a lot. Keep it simple and just keep going. Simple, repeat the process. And it is hard because I love being creative, and I think that sometimes limiting yourself to do that can be negative. And having that creative mind where you keep things going is really key. But yeah, keeping it simple and staying focused, for me, that also is a really difficult thing. But it's nice to hear that other people go through the same stuff, just in a different way. So last kind of question on more of an intro piece, but when you think about, when you reflect and you look back, what up until this point, as Prime is really starting to move into a growth phase, what has been your favorite thing, moment, light bulb moment so far?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of milestones that we hit that just felt really good, right? Like crossing $1 million in ARR. That was, it's like, okay, we've made it to some degree. I actually suck at celebrating in general. Like it's sort of like, okay, cool, check the box, move on. I'm a bit of a masochist. But the thing that really has I'm consistently every day, like hopping on calls or chatting with folks. The thing that consistently feels good is building the team. Like we are a gang of misfits. And it's like, it's just so fun, like having a bunch of I don't know, people from all over the world, all sorts of different personality types, people that don't necessarily pattern match to what I think a lot of teams tend to look like not everybody went to the right school, not everybody worked at all the right places, but they're hungry and they're fun and they're nice and they're smart, and that is it's just building the team has been just the best part so far. Yeah.
I mean, as a recruiter, I love to hear that. I think it's great for people who are coming into the business, who, when they see this really cohesive, great group of people who are all working on the same joint mission. It's nice. We have the same thing here because we're also a startup. It's great when you have those collaborative moments and everyone's all on the same page, or not, but you get there eventually in a really great, nice way, because I'm sure we've all been there and worked somewhere where that wasn't the case at some point in time. So came from an idea, it's moved into a point now where I mean, you mentioned some successes so far, but you've got a great bunch of people, you're on a growth strategy. But how did you get Primer out the door in the first case?
Yeah. We were pretty scrappy, as I think, a lot of folks are. Talking about pattern matching, I think, having worked at Dropbox and worked at certain places, my co-founder Juan has a really impressive resume. We could have probably gone out and just raised a big seed round and worked away for a year and launched something. But we actually chose pretty decisively not to do that, to steer clear of venture at first. And we bootstrapped it, self-funded. We wanted to, I think we'd both been through a couple of experiences where or experiences, or just and just seen, frankly, like a lot of products that raised a bunch of money, like didn't, and then never saw product market fit, never even saw product market signal. So to us, it was important if we were going to build something that we knew that it was solving a pain pretty quickly. So we started working on it halftime. We were both doing the advising consulting thing, so that gave us a little cushion. We, started working on an MVP probably like late 2019, rolled it out mid 2020, and really quickly had the growth teams at Rippling and Brex and Verkada and Ironclad and all these, later stage, like really hyper growth B2B startups using it. And I was like, okay, shit, we got something here. Like, this is cool. Like, we got, and we didn't know how to price. Like, we were just like just pay us, a usage basis, and like no SaaS, model at all, no subscription model. Like we were gunslinging, wheeling and dealing. And then like 2020, like end of 2020, Rippling, one of our biggest customers, came to us and said, hey, we're trying to solve this problem. Looks like you guys kind of do it. Is this part of your vision? And we were like, yes, in fact, it is. Like, this is really cool. Like, you want this next thing? This is exactly what we were going to build. And in talking to other customers, they were like, they wanted it too. We had this approach out of the gate where we would just like, if more than 3 customers wanted exactly the same thing, exactly the same way, we would just do it. Like, we would just say, sure, we'll do it for you. And it wouldn't be pretty. It would be like mechanical turked on the back end with like a bunch of, like duct tape and, but we would make it work and then build it and then kind of operationalize it and then build it into the product. And that has served us really well. I think we're actually hitting a point now, which is interesting, where we actually have to stop doing that quite so much. like I think we're being a little too scrappy still. We need to be a little more disciplined. But it's basically how we were able to get strong momentum, find product market fit fast. We raised the seed round because we knew we just needed more engineers. We needed to hire faster because there was such demand. And the vision was kept getting bigger and bigger as we knew the problem was really big, but the actual path to solving that problem kept becoming clearer and clearer as we were building. And we just had a really good story to tell and a really good reason, frankly, to raise venture capital. So, yeah.
It sounds like what you're alluding to there is that people were quite literally getting on board because you were solving a problem for them and repeatedly doing that by improving what you were offering. I want to talk about the problem that you're solving, and we've spoken before and we've talked a little bit about the modern data stack and how what Primer is doing, it can reduce the need for a data engineering team. And I want the people listening to understand a little bit more about what that means, what the modern data stack is, and then how Primer comes into play.
Sure. Yeah. So let me first kind of describe what problem we're actually solving, because I don't think I mentioned that yet. So we are, our target buyer is a B2B go-to-market team. So it might be sales or marketing leader, it might be somebody with growth in their title, demand gen. And in my own experience, having played in this world for a while now, a lot of companies, the way they operate is they'll put together a bullet point, or a Google slide of here's my persona, right? Here's my ICP. And then they'll say, okay, let's try out LinkedIn for reaching them. Let's send a bunch of cold emails with the sales team. Let's create a contact list in HubSpot or Salesforce and nurture them with something. And they're trying to take those bullet points and plug them into these other tools, and make these channels work for them with the targeting capabilities built into those channels. And it turns out that channel first approach is actually backwards, because, if you think about the job to be done of any marketer, the first thing you say is like, I've got this metric I need to move. And then it's, okay, who is this for? Like you're supposed to always be relentlessly audience first, but it's hard to be audience first because you're kind of constrained by all the channels. Like you need email, like you need sales, you need advertising. So what Primer does, what I found, and what I think a lot of other, companies that are at the tip of the spear when it comes to B2B marketing, is that you can actually identify a huge chunk of your target market, and you can represent those in a table, like as people and companies. And the way to do that is actually by stacking data providers on top of each other. So, you take a Zoom Info plus an Apollo plus a Dun & Bradstreet, yada, yada, yada. You layer them on top of each other and you can get as many rows as possible of companies that fit your ICP. And then, there might be interesting ways you want to segment that. So you could add in other data providers, like you want technographics about a company, like what's their tech stack? You want to know their funding information. You can add in, think of that as like adding in columns of data. And then you can push that out to your marketing and sales apps as audiences, and those audiences can be pretty much identical across any channel. And that just leads to much better, more effective conversion rates. And people can copy your messaging and your creative, but they can't really copy your targeting. It's really hard to figure out how to copy your targeting. So this is fundamentally, though, a data problem, right? How do you stitch together a bunch of first-party data sets, third-party data sets, merge them, load them, transform them, all the fun things that data engineers do, right? So I wouldn't say that we're replacing data engineers. I would say we are maybe allowing them to focus on other problems, because there's so much demand. I mean, if you're a data engineer, you probably have like 20 job offers like tomorrow. Like there's so much demand for data engineers and not enough supply. So what we're trying to do is kind of like fit into existing data engineering teams, which we work with those at a bunch of our customers, and just they don't have to spend as much time building like connectors into these third-party databases. We've got those off the shelf. So think of us like, in some ways, it's like Fivetran for third-party data. And then, we have an opinionated schema about how things should look, and you don't have to create your own schema. You don't have to do all the merges that, have to do all the transformations yourself. We have those out of the box. So it's a data application, I would say, on top of the modern data stack is the right way to think about us.
I mean, coming from someone who does a lot of marketing in recruitment, I think we use so many different tools, and there are so many out there that it can, as the individual in that role, it can feel like you're going to so many different places to do the one thing. And it's great to have all of those tools, but as you said, something that stitches all of that together. I mean, you've got me hooked. I'd like
great. Nice. You guys want to sign up?
More than likely. So I think what would be nice to hear is clearly you've gone from strength to strength, that you're solving a problem, it's going well, you've got a great core team there. That's what you're growing. What was 2022 for Primer? What have you got in stock that you can tell us about?
Sure. So I think a lot of it is about taking, what has been a very beta product and making it more stable, more performant, faster, layering in more sources, pushing more destinations, and then abstracting a lot of the complexity, more and more of the complexity away. So if you think about, we're complementing data engineering teams, but our end users are not data engineers, and they're not even necessarily like that data savvy, right? Yeah, well, maybe that's not fair. I hope none of our customers are listening to this. You guys are all very data savvy. But I think there's a lot of folks in the world of B2B marketing who aren't. So part of our challenge in 2022 is starting to tell the story about how you should approach things differently. But from a product perspective, I would say it's actually helping people understand and how to translate what can at sometimes be vague criteria into data points that actually represent that. A good example is SaaS. right? A lot of companies are targeting other SaaS businesses. That's not a standard industry classification. If you go on LinkedIn, you're not going to see SaaS as like a filter. So how do you triangulate in on SaaS through a few other data points? Like, do they have more than 5 people in the engineering department? Are they venture backed? Maybe that helps. Are they using certain tools, technologies? Like, there's ways you can get in, but that there's an educational component there, and there's maybe some heuristics that we want to build into the product that make it easier for folks to drill down on their ideal customers and really represent them. Yeah.
What do you think has been a key to your success so far in when you've scaled? And that can be at Primer, that can be when you were at Dropbox.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of aspects to scaling, right? It's, we could be talking top line growth. We could be talking hiring and building out the team. I would say, this is going to probably be a little cliche, but it's trying to be as metrics driven as possible. I think there's an interesting arc of the life cycle of a company when it goes from being kind of like, what's the right word for it? We are maybe data aware, but now we're trying to be more data driven. So being a data driven culture from the get-go that informs, like, obviously we're providing almost data as a service to our customers, but like really measuring all the key aspects of our business and our product engagement to inform what we do next. That's I think going to be the big key to success for us in this next phase. Yeah. And then how have we gotten here so far? I think it's again, it's actually like being like data informed. I would say is like we know exactly who our early adopter customer is, and we're building for them, and we keep trying to be like relentlessly focused on them and trying not to get pushed away by distractions. And then the third thing I'll say, and this is the hardest part, perhaps, which is in building out teams, like different functions of the business. I've been striving to hire folks that are operators, but also can grow into being leaders. So finding somebody who like will come in and be an IC, but then is also capable of building out a team. It might be their first time doing that, but they have it in them. That is like those people are diamonds. They're hard to find, but when you find them, it gives you so much more leverage across like a function, in a business or across a business unit. Yeah.
Also, as someone who recruits day in, day out, I can wholeheartedly agree with you. They are diamonds and really hard to find, but when you do, they do make a ton of difference. I'd like to throw in one more thing. So if someone listening is a CEO, a CMO, or just somebody who does a lot of B2B marketing and they're not yet convinced that Primer is the best for them, what's your one-liner as to why someone should pick up the phone and at least find out more about Primer?
Okay. I probably need to work on this. I don't think I have like the pithy one-liner. But I will say like if you are a marketer, or if your team is finding itself ever doing like VLOOKUPs to merge two Excel files, two CSVs together, to accomplish some sort of like data, like stitching together data, then you shouldn't be doing that. You should be using Primer. We could save you so much time and money, and then like we could give you access to so much more data, and then you probably have at your fingertips. So the key for us is like it has to be somebody who's feeling this pain of like one data source is not enough. And if that's the case, then we're the right place for you. Yeah.
Love it. Well, In the comments in the post, there is going to be links to where you can go and get more information. I mean, of course, you can also reach out to Keith directly. But I hope that anybody listening, it's been fun, it's been enjoyable. I have certainly enjoyed this conversation. And I can absolutely see the benefits of Primer. And for those who are also sitting there thinking, this sounds like something I would like to be involved in, Keith sounds like a great person to work for. Drop him a message.
Yeah,
hit him
please
up.
do.
He wants to talk to you.
Keith at Say Primer. We are hiring for like 20 roles right now. So, yeah.
Well, Keith, thank you so much. It's been great speaking to you. And I hope that maybe in a year's time we can get you back on and talk about how great it's been since 2022.
Thanks, Rosie. Appreciate the time and the opportunity. And thanks everybody for listening.